Well, I'm back with the non-fleeced wonder that he is, wearing his cap. Who is on there? Yep, here we are. It's part two. Part one, we discussed the potential Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua mega fight, and also, of course, the fallout from Saul Canelo Alvarez and Billy Joe Saunders. But this week in Las Vegas, for all the super lightweight, or as I like to call it, light welterweight marbles at 140 pounds, Josh Taylor against Jose Carlos Ramirez. They are both undefeated. They're in the prime of their lives. This is a fight we have all anticipated for so long. Tiny crowd in the old Hard Rock Hotel, now the Virgin Hotel, isn't it? Dan, tell me how excited you are about this matchup.
I absolutely love the fight. You call it, what'd you say? You call it super lightweight?
I call it light welterweight.
I call it junior welterweight, or for the sake of my good friends in Britain, I'll call it 10 stone.
Yeah.
Listen, whatever you call it
Ricky
any of those
Hatton's
four
weight.
things.
I like to call it Ricky Hatton's weight.
Exactly. If you are a boxing fan, this is a fight that you should have had circled on your boxing calendar, on my Fight Freaks Unite schedule, on my newsletter. Since the moment that this fight was made, it's been a long time coming. You know, these are two fighters in Jose Ramirez and Josh Taylor who did not look to run for anything else. They both wanted this fight. Once they got their second titles, they wanted to unify. It's just a great matchup because, like you mentioned, they're both undefeated. They're both in the prime of their careers. They both bring a lot to the table. They're both superb fighters. They're both Olympians, so they've got that amateur pedigree that is the building block for top professionals usually. And there's scenarios where you can see either guy winning. I've talked to lots of people over the last couple of months since this fight was made who can't make a pick because it's like, well, I can see Josh winning, I can see Jose winning. It's the kind of fight where you hope that both guys fight the fight of their life, and whoever wins, they both can elevate their careers. It's one of those rare fights in boxing where it's for all the marbles, all four titles, undefeated records on the line. I mean, I'd have to go back and study to figure out when's the last time there was a fight for the undisputed championship in any weight class, be it 3 belts or 4 belts, where both of the fighters were undefeated in the fight. It's a very rare occurrence. And I think it's going to be a tremendous fight. I do wish it was in a big arena where you could have a big crowd. The place where they're going to hold it in Las Vegas, like you said, the former Hard Rock. I've covered fights there in the past.
Me too.
It's a great venue if you want to be. The fans are right
like
on top
of the ring.
Club
venue rather than a big stadium venue. Low ceiling bar.
Yeah, even if they can pack the place and it was full capacity, it only would hold about.
I think.
Yeah, so I think for this fight they're going to be lucky if they have like about 1,000 people or something like that. So. That's the only down point of it. But, if you're watching on TV, it shouldn't make a difference. It's going to be a great fight. And, my hat's off to both guys for taking this fight for Top Rank, for making the match. I'm I'm as pumped up for this fight as any I've been in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, and I'm not knocking Fight TV, it's brilliant they're taking it over here, but it's annoying that either Sky Sports or BT Sport or Channel 5 or the broadcasters here have not picked it up for the
Why is that, do you think?
I really don't know. I mean, it does not make any sense at all. Sky Sports, certainly BT Sport should have picked this up in my view because they covered Josh Taylor's knockout of the Thai fighter in one round, a body shot, last December or November, December. It's just these things fall down the cracks sometimes, and it's just so irritating.
In the UK, who was the one that was the broadcaster for the World Boxing Super Series when Josh was able to unify the titles? He beat Baranchik and then he defeated Victor Postol. Was that a Sky show or was that elsewhere?
Do you know what? I was at them all, and I'm trying to remember who the broadcaster was.
Yeah, because it's just a shame that this quality of a fight, the fact that BT would buy the mandatory against an opponent that was totally unknown that turned out to be one of the biggest mismatches you could ever see in terms of the one-round knockout, and then leave the great fight on the table like this is really disappointing.
I'm pretty sure that Taylor versus Prograis, I want to say BT Sports.
Okay. But let me ask you.
But was it Matchroom? I've gone completely blank.
Well, you're a connoisseur of great fights, as you know, for many years, going to these fights and covering them. What's your take on this matchup? I mean, I know you have to be excited about it also. You love a great scrap.
Well, I'm in the UK right now, and I have ardently and perspicaciously been challenging the American embassy to give me a national interest exemption to travel there by Thursday or Friday, just so I can get in on the day to be there for the fight. Josh Taylor's got the chance to become the first undisputed Scotsman who's boxed since Ken Buchanan 50 years ago. Ken Buchanan, for me, is one of the top 5 British boxers from the last 50 years. You can make a case for him being the best. He was extraordinary. And I go back speaking to people like Colin Hart about just how good he was. And he traveled to America and he won titles as well. You look at the two men. I spoke to Jose Ramirez earlier today. In his last 6 fights, Dan, since Mike Reed to Victor Postol, his opponents have had a record, and he's beaten them all, obviously, of 157-4.
That's pretty good.
Josh Taylor's 5 opponents, which got him to this is what got him to number 9 in the Ring Magazine pound for pound rankings. Because the World Boxing Super Series was generated a lot of interest and was promoted really well. His last 5 opponents were 110-1. So between them, when you look at that, we're not looking at a fight for all the titles here. We are looking at a fight where one man who wins this walks into the elite level of our sport. Elite. And I mean, talking about, because Bob Arum promotes both these men and Terence Crawford, there might be a Terence Crawford fight there, super fight. It's the kind of fight that will not necessarily create a star, but create a fighter who has the opportunity to go onto major platforms in the future. And you cannot pick a winner out of these two men, I don't think. It's not possible to do it. Josh Taylor's got amazing skills, can box and fight, and is a very stubborn, very tough individual who's very adaptive. Jose Ramirez loves God, his family, and boxing. And he says the first 2 things give him the third thing. And he is a man on a mission in his life, spiritually, physically, emotionally, intellectually. He's so outstanding. He's one of the most outstanding individuals in the whole world of boxing. All of this narrative just makes me very excited. That's why I want to be sitting ringside on Saturday night.
I agree with everything that you said. And the thing about it is, when you talk about the records of the opponents that these guys have faced and the caliber of fights that they've already had in terms of, getting to this point, it's not like they got to this point to fight for this undisputed title by fighting nobodies. They didn't cherry pick these belts. I mean, they both fought Victor Postol, very tough dude. Josh Taylor fought good competition in the World Boxing Super Series with the two big wins, of course, against Branchik and with the big one against Prograis. And then Jose Ramirez, he defeated quality guys also, whether it was, the Postol defense, or he defeated Amir Imam, who was a very quality fighter at the time when they met for the what was at the time the vacant WBC title. And he's had some quality defenses along the way. I mean, they've both fought, very good competition and won, impressively. I mean, even the people that thought that maybe Jose maybe got a little bit of a generous nod. It wasn't like it was against a poor opponent. It was against Jose Zepeda, a very solid, tough, quality contender who was in the 2020 fight of the year that he won against Branchik. So these guys are experienced against the top level. And as I mentioned before, that you cannot underestimate the pedigree of these two guys in terms of their amateur background, their Olympic experiences. Jose Ramirez, this was sort of the expectation when he turned pro, that this was the upside of what he could be. I was at his professional debut. I remember watching and talking to his manager, and I saw him throw his left hook. And I swear, I'm not trying to hype it up or anything. When I saw the way he throws the left hook, all I could think about was Oscar De La Hoya. Same kind of left hook out of a big amateur background. He was just a baby back then, and he's really developed exceptionally well. Quality matchmaking from his promotion, great management from Rick Meridian and Top Rank. Josh Taylor also has had, not a lot of easy fights. He's moved a little more quickly than Jose because he is a little bit older and a little bit more experienced as an amateur than Jose was. But they've gotten to this point where they both have a chance to write a significant portion of their future legacy in this sport on Saturday night.
I know, it's just so amazing to be.
I'm so mad I'm not going to be there.
Well, maybe I'll fly you in. Come on, we can do a few. We can do a few video casts like this. I've just recalled. I went through the memory banks of where I was sitting for Taylor and Prograde just to correct myself. It was a Matchroom fight on Sky Sports that night, and it was very big. 20,000 people at the O2 Arena. It was.
I don't know why Sky wouldn't buy this fight then. I mean,
it doesn't make any sense.
I know everybody has budgets and everything, but still.
But the problem is that Hearn's got that whole move to DAZN. I know it's not official yet, but he's got the whole move to DAZN going on. Sky Sports are reevaluating. It's a very kind of it's a very fluctuating time in many ways. It will all settle, but
But it's not like it's two Americans. It involves the number one fighter in Scotland.
Yeah, I know, but it's very frustrating, very, very frustrating. Look, no, it's not quite dinner time yet, but
are we gonna? I can't make a pick on the fight though. I just don't. Well, I kind of know who I'm picking, but it's not with strong conviction.
I'm gonna go. I'll ding the bell again in a minute for dinner and the other thing we're going to talk about, which I know you want to because it's a very special person in your career and your life. I think Taylor can adapt. I'm on the fence because I mean, we don't know until it plays out. And I saw the two guys together earlier today by mistake when they were both on a Zoom call, and they were so respectful to each other for 15 seconds. They were saying, "See you Thursday, yeah." And they've never met, and they apparently have sat next to each other before. But you know, it's one of those things.
But in the weird COVID world, there was never a press conference because Josh is over there and Jose's, he's over in Josh in Scotland, and or he's been in Vegas, I guess, now for the last several weeks getting ready. He wanted, part of his agreement with Top Rank was that he wanted to make sure that he was in Las Vegas at least 30 days before the fight. So he's been training. He should be. There's not going to be any excuses in terms of the.
So come on, then pick.
No problems getting used to the time change or the climate. Jose's in LA doing his training camp. Look, I'm picking Jose Ramirez. I mean, I have all the respect in the world for Josh Taylor. I've rolled with Jose since day one as a professional. I've always thought that he had huge upside. I've always been an admirer of his skills and his tenacity. He's the kind of guy. I don't think he has the greatest skills, but he's got the greatest effort. And if I'm like a general manager and I'm drafting players or boxers in a sport or whatever, give me the guy with like the B+ talent or the B talent, but the A+
can get the job done ugly or whatever. Can get the
I'd rather have the guy with the never say die attitude and the gargantuan effort and work ethic and just sheer balls than the guy with the A+ talent that maybe slacks off a little bit. I'm not saying that that's what Josh Taylor does.
No, because that's the kind of guy that Jose Ramirez is. Because Taylor's got cojones as well.
Yeah, no, I'm not debating that. I'm just saying, to me, I just see Taylor or rather Ramirez just a little bit ahead in this fight. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. So be it. I mean, good for Josh Taylor. I'm not rooting for anybody. I want to see a great fight, and I have respect for both of these young guys. They're both tremendous fighters. And by the way, the loser of this fight, I hope just moves on and continues their career at a top level. Just because one guy loses the fight on Saturday does not in any way mean that they're not going to achieve great things in the future.
We might put a call in to Bob Arum, see if there's a rematch clause as well, eh?
My understanding is there's not a rematch clause.
No, there isn't. Okay.
Not with all these belts at stake. No reason.
Okay. Right. Round two of this one. Okay. It's a very special day for someone who you love and admire and respect very much.
Today is the 65th birthday of the one and only all-time legend. My hero as a young boxing fan when I was growing up is the one and only Sugar Ray Leonard. I know you have a great admiration for him also. And to think that I would watch Sugar Ray Leonard fighting on television as a young kid in the late 70s, early 80s as a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old, to grow up and not only to actually meet Sugar Ray Leonard, get to know him, be able to call him a friend, have his phone number, work with him on broadcasts. We both did shows on Epics together back years ago when they were televising live fights, to hang out with him in Nottingham, England, when we were there to cover the Carl Froch's great victory against Lucien Boutet, who Carl Froch, by the way, I had a wonderful time hanging out with him when we were in Texas in the same hotel for the Canelo Alvarez, Billy Joe Saunders fight. So 65 is, I guess in our country anyway, when you can start to collect your retirement benefits, and Sugar Ray Leonard, even at 65,
free bus rides, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. He still looks like he'd kick all of our asses.
Oh, doesn't he? What's for you? And obviously, I've met him many times and interviewed him as well. What for you is the standout victory for him? Is it the marvelous Marvin Hagler? We haven't spoken about him since. Rest in peace. Beautiful man, wonderful human being. Is it that fight? Is it earlier in the career? What stands out for you?
I mean, it's hard to look past the magnitude of what he did against Marvin Hagler, and I know people are always argue about that fight. I thought that Sugar Ray Leonard won that fight. I went back and I watched it not that long ago, because after Marvin passed, and then shortly thereafter in April, it was the anniversary. I've always been, a huge fan of that fight, and so I went back and I rewatched. I rescored the fight. I still come up with the same thing. That's a 7-5 fight in favor of Sugar Ray Leonard. I posted my round by round scores on Twitter if people wanted to argue with me. So I'll go to my grave being a huge Marvin Hagler fan also, but believing with every fiber of my being that Sugar Ray Leonard was the rightful winner of that particular fight. So that stands out. But it's hard to overlook the revenge win against Duran. That's a big deal. And maybe it wasn't like a great fight, but, to go back in with Duran, 4 months later and do what he did, make the great Duran, quit. But I think for me, it's probably the Tommy Hearns first fight. Two prime guys. At the time back when in a normal world where we only had 2 belts instead of 17 in every 2 belt unification instead of 4. That was a great fight, and Ray overcame a lot in that fight, and he took down his great rival. But that's the thing about Ray Leonard's career. It was not. He only had about 38 fights overall, and big gaps with retirements and injuries and such. But he's got so many memorable fights. If you want to talk about the Hearns 1, yeah. You want to talk about the Duran, both 1 and 2. Talk about the Hagler fight. Talk about the Benitez fight. I mean, there's just he's had a great career, and happy birthday to my man.
And such a grace as a person is what I love about him. It's always time for people. Just a wonderful human being, in my view.
He's a great guy. I remember, by the way, one time, I don't remember where we were, but we were talking about his Olympic. Maybe we were on the phone. I think I was interviewing about something or other, and somehow, some way, his Olympic experience came up in our conversation. And we were talking about, how, remember, people who don't realize how big boxing was in the United States anyway, back in that time in 1976.
And he was a superstar, wasn't he? He was a superstar.
Megastar. You had Howard Cosell, the great sports announcer on ABC. Yeah. He televised a lot of those amateur events, which they don't do anymore, obviously. Yeah. So Ray, even before the Olympics started, and many of the other fighters on that team, the Spinks brothers, they were already known to the American sports public. So when he went and in Montreal won the gold medal, those were every single time he boxed, it was a big deal. So he was already like a superstar when he came out of the Olympics. And I remember seeing who was like Aaron Pryor talk about on one of the HBO Legendary Night specials about how, when Ray Leonard turned pro, he made $40,000 for his pro debut, which was like unheard of. Whereas a guy like Aaron Pryor was every bit the amateur without the gold medal, was making like $1,000 a week as a sparring partner. So, Ray was a megastar from day one and went on to become as big of a star as you can get. And the difference, it's one thing to be a star, but he could back it up because of his talent. He was and is one of the greatest pound for pound fighters in the history of boxing. He's a top, 5, 6, 7 all-time fighter in the history of the sport. In talking to him about his Olympic background, he made the comment like that he didn't really, he hadn't seen any of his Olympic fights for a long time. And I'm like, well, a matter of fact, I have a DVD of all of your Olympic fights in order, plus the amateur U.S. Olympic trials when he earned the spot in the Olympics that I had in my boxing video collection. And he was like, can you make me a copy of it? And like, what am I going to say no to Ray Leonard? Of course. Like the next day I made the video and I sent it out to him. So he was very appreciative of that. So it's always been I got to get a kick out of the fact that I could provide Ray Leonard with those great memories of the DVD of his Olympic fights, because he provided me and millions of others with a lot of great moments and memories of our sports fanhood.
That's the fantastic thing about our sport, is the accessibility to the biggest stars, and we are so fortunate to have it. Dan?
That's the bell. No hitting after the bell.
Yep. What's for dinner tonight?
Oh, I told you in part one, Gareth. I have no idea. The wife and my son, they're out doing their activity. I'll get a call in a little bit. My wife will say, "What's for dinner?" She'll have a suggestion because my son will come up with an idea, and we'll discuss it. But I wish, even though we haven't done these videos for a while, that I could give you the definitive answer of what's for dinner, and I just can't do it.
It's the eternal return with you. It really is. It never happens. I need that moment at some point down the line. Or but maybe it would maybe it'd be the end of us if I do find out what's for dinner. Always a pleasure, my man. Great to see you. Yeah.
I hope you're able to get your stuff arranged and make it out to Vegas for Taylor and Ramirez.
It's all in the hands of the US Embassy in London. And if you're watching, please sign it off tomorrow. Dan, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed for all your thoughts, all your feelings, all your knowledge, your encyclopedic ability on boxing. You are brilliant, my man.
We'll talk soon, my friend.
Cheers.